The day the body chose preservation. Nothing dramatic happened that day. No injury, no illness, no visible collapse. And yet, something fundamental shifted inside the body, quietly changing how time would move from that point forward. The shift left no trace that anyone could have detected from the outside. It registered on no test, triggered no symptom, and prompted no concern. But it altered the trajectory of aging in a way that would only become visible much later, when the accumulated consequences had already taken hold. Aging is often imagined as gradual wear, a slow erosion that unfolds evenly across years. But to understand why this day mattered, we need to abandon that idea. Because modern research suggests aging can pivot. It can change strategy. And when it does, the body begins playing a different game. The shift is not from health to illness. It is from investment to conservation, a reallocation of biological resources so quiet that the person experiencing it may never notice the moment it begins. For years, this individual had adapted well. Stress came and went. Recovery followed. The system stayed flexible. But beneath the surface, signals were accumulating. Deadlines without endings. Responsibilities without pause. Pressure that never fully resolved. Each unresolved demand added to a biological ledger that the conscious mind could not read. A running total of strain that the body tracked with far greater precision than any calendar or to-do list. On this particular day, nothing new was added. No extra burden appeared. What changed was internal. The body reached a conclusion, not consciously, but biologically, that the environment was no longer predictable enough to support growth. The calculation was not emotional. It was metabolic, a cold assessment of incoming signals that determined, on the balance of evidence, that the safest response was to stop reaching forward and begin holding steady. Stress responses stopped cycling cleanly. Hormonal rhythms flattened. Repair processes hesitated. The system began prioritizing stability over improvement, not because it was failing, but because it was protecting itself. The distinction is crucial. Preservation is not breakdown. It is a deliberate reallocation, a strategic withdrawal from the expensive work of renewal into the more conservative work of maintenance. Researchers later identified this moment as a preservation shift, a point where biology decides that maintaining function is safer than attempting repair. Aging does not speed up instantly here. It becomes quieter, more resistant, less responsive. The body does not deteriorate dramatically. It simply stops improving, stops reaching, stops investing in the kind of cellular renewal that distinguishes biological youth from biological age. What makes this shift so dangerous is how invisible it feels. Life continues. Productivity remains. Habits stay intact. But the body is no longer investing in the future the same way. The resources that once flowed toward growth, repair, and adaptation are now redirected toward vigilance, conservation, and endurance. The change is invisible precisely because the body continues to function, just under a different set of priorities. This is why two people can look identical on the surface, yet age very differently afterward. One remains adaptive, the other becomes conservative, and that difference often traces back to a single period when life stopped feeling resolvable. The external circumstances may have been similar. The divergence was internal, determined by whether the body believed that effort would be rewarded with recovery or met with still more demand. The day the body chooses preservation is not marked on a calendar, but once it passes, time begins behaving differently. After the preservation shift, the body does not announce its decision. There is no alarm, no symptom that demands attention. Instead, subtle changes begin to appear in how systems respond. The changes are so incremental that they are easily attributed to normal variation, to a bad night of sleep, to seasonal shifts, to the ordinary fluctuations of daily life. Recovery takes slightly longer. Sleep feels less restorative. Stress lingers after events that once resolved quickly. These are not failures. They are signals of a new priority. Each one reflects a reallocation of resources, a quiet decision by the body to spend less on renewal and more on readiness. Biologically, preservation mode is efficient. Energy is conserved. Risk is minimized. Repairs rationed. The body chooses to maintain what exists rather than invest in what might be damaged again. The logic is sound from a survival perspective. In an environment that never stops demanding, the most rational strategy is to stop spending resources on improvements that will immediately be eroded. Researchers notice that once this shift occurs, typical longevity interventions lose their potency. Exercise still helps, but gains are smaller. Diet improves markers, but resilience does not fully return. The system resists expansion. The interventions are not failing. They are meeting a body that has decided, at a level deeper than conscious choice, that expansion is not currently safe. This resistance is protective. Growth requires openness. Openness requires trust that the environment will not immediately impose new strain. When life feels endlessly demanding, biology closes ranks. The body does not make this decision out of pessimism. It makes it out of pattern recognition, reading the cumulative evidence of its recent experience and drawing the most conservative conclusion available. The most striking discovery was reversibility. In some cases, preservation softened, not through force, but through proof. Periods where effort truly ended, responsibilities concluded, identity stabilized. The proof had to be sustained and unambiguous. Not a single good weekend, but a genuine shift in the pattern of demand that the body could detect over weeks or months. When those conditions appeared, even briefly, repair pathways reactivated. Aging slowed. Flexibility returned. The body had not forgotten how to grow. It had been waiting for safety. The machinery of renewal had not been dismantled. It had been suspended, held in reserve until the environment demonstrated that investing in growth would not be punished by immediate new strain. This revealed the true nature of the shift. Preservation is not permanent damage. It is a decision made in response to unresolved pressure. And that decision can change, but only when life demonstrates that growth will not be punished. Until then, the body holds steady, guarding what remains, as time quietly presses forward. The conflict emerges when preservation is misunderstood. From the outside, it looks like failure. Plateaus, slower progress, diminishing returns. But internally, the body believes it is doing the safest thing possible. The disconnect between external perception and internal logic is where much of the frustration originates. The person feels like they are trying harder than ever, while the body responds as though trying harder is precisely the problem. Modern longevity culture responds to this resistance with pressure. More discipline, more tracking, more intervention. But these signals confirm the body's fear. That demand never truly ends. Each new protocol, each additional supplement, each escalation of effort sends the same message the body has been receiving all along, that the environment is relentless and that there will be no opportunity to rest. Researchers observe that individuals stuck in preservation mode often intensified effort at the worst possible time. Systems already guarding themselves were pushed harder. Recovery shrank further. Aging accelerated under the weight of good intentions. The paradox was painful. The desire to reverse aging was itself accelerating it, because the body interpreted the escalation as further evidence that the environment could not be trusted. This revealed a critical mismatch. Human narratives celebrate perseverance. Biology values resolution. When effort escalates without closure, preservation deepens. The stories we tell ourselves about discipline and commitment are not wrong in every context, but they are biologically misleading when applied to a system that has already decided the priority is survival, not growth. The conflict is structural. Lives designed around constant optimization rarely allow proof of safety. Even rest is treated as preparation for the next push. The body never sees an end point. The architecture of modern ambition is built around the assumption that forward motion should never cease, and that assumption directly contradicts the condition under which the body is willing to invest in its own renewal. Those who escaped preservation did not fight it. They changed conditions. Long-running stressors ended, roles simplified, identity stabilized. Nothing dramatic, just fewer open loops. The change was not heroic. It was architectural, a reorganization of circumstance that allowed the body to draw a different conclusion about its environment. When this happened, biology responded quickly. Stress rhythms regained contrast. Repair signals strengthened. The body loosened its grip on conservation. The speed of the response surprised researchers because it suggested that the machinery of growth had never been far away. It had simply been waiting behind a gate that only safety could open. The lesson was clear and uncomfortable. Longevity does not stall because we stop trying. It stalls because life stops proving that trying will be allowed to finish. And until that proof exists, preservation remains the body's most rational choice. The climax of this story is the realization that the body does not choose preservation out of weakness. It chooses it out of intelligence. When the environment feels endlessly demanding, growth becomes risky. Repair becomes wasteful. Preservation becomes the safest strategy available. The body is not broken. It is calculating, and its calculation is based on evidence that the conscious mind may not even recognize it is providing. The resolution is not to override this response, but to earn the body's trust back, to create lives that demonstrate completion, where effort ends, where recovery is not a brief pause, but a genuine conclusion. The task is not to force the body out of preservation, but to change the conditions that made preservation necessary. Longevity responds to safety more than to force. When systems feel secure, they invest again. Repair resumes. Flexibility returns. Aging slows not through control, but through permission. The permission is not granted by willpower. It is granted by environment, by the sustained evidence that demand has a limit and that rest will not be interrupted. Modern life rarely provides this permission. We stack goals, extend pressure, blur endings, and then wonder why biology stops cooperating. But the body is not broken. It is listening, and when life finally shows that it can finish what it starts, the clock does not stop. It simply begins moving more slowly again. Subscribe to join the journey.